Everyday items feel so normal that we barely notice them. Velcro, snap. Tea bags, dunk. Toothpaste, squeeze and go. Yet not long ago, none of these existed. Their backstories are full of accidents, clever hacks, and the occasional marketing stunt. Each object is like a time capsule, showing how science, culture, and human curiosity all cross paths. By tracing how these small conveniences came about, we get a bigger picture of how society itself evolves. And for those who don't know, welcome to Chronos History, where we break down the greatest moments in history and turn them into greater stories. Whether you're bored, learning, or somewhere in between, we've got something cooked up for you to keep you entertained. So without further ado, let's jump right into this. Cigarettes are a good example of how war, fashion, and technology teamed up to create something iconic. Tobacco hit Europe in the 16th and 17th centuries, spreading from the Americas like the latest global trend. In the Ottoman Empire, people who couldn't afford pipes sometimes just rolled tobacco in papyrus or thin paper, a quick workaround that really stuck. Things really took off during the Crimean War from 1853 to 1856. French and British soldiers, without their usual clay pipes, started pouring loose tobacco into paper cartridge cases. It was practical, quick, and suddenly everybody was doing it. The idea spread fast, especially in France and Spain, where workshops began making ready-to-smoke rolls called cigarettes, a French word for little cigars. By the 1860s and 1870s, factories in Spain and France were mass-producing cigarettes, and the US picked up interest after the Civil War. The big breakthrough, however, came in 1880 when James Bonsack built a machine that could roll thousands of cigarettes an hour. The price dropped sharply, and cigarettes went from improvised soldier hack to a defining consumer product of the late 19th and 20th centuries. The microwave's story begins in a radar lab, not a kitchen. In 1945, Raytheon engineer Percy Spencer noticed the chocolate bar in his pocket had melted while he was working near a magnetron, a device generating microwaves for radar. Instead of just ignoring it, he tested it further. Corn kernels placed nearby popped into popcorn, and an egg tested ended in an explosion. Clear proof these waves could heat food fast. Spencer and Raytheon patented the idea in 1946, and by 1947, the first industrial radar range units appeared. These were no countertop gadgets, however. They stood nearly 2 meters tall and weighed over 300 kilos, and were mostly used in restaurants or military kitchens. In the 1960s, smaller and cheaper magnetrons made microwaves accessible to homes, and by the 1970s, they were standard in kitchens. What started with a melted candy bar became one of the most convenient cooking tools of the modern era. Dental care had a surprisingly long history. Around 5,000 years ago, Egyptians brushed with powders made from pumice, ash, ox hooves, and eggshells. Gritty but effective. Romans later added herbs and bones, while in China and India, spices and charcoal were common. For centuries, most people in Europe stuck with homemade abrasive mixes of chalk, ash, or salt to clean their teeth. Things shifted in the 19th century, however. In the 1820s, British dentist Pepso Kelly created a commercial paste using chalk and soap, though it came in ceramic jars that dried out quickly. The real game changer came in the 1890s when Colgate began selling toothpaste in tin tubes, the same type artists used for paints. It was hygienic, portable, and lasted way longer. By the 20th century, toothpaste formulas added fluoride to prevent cavities, plus refreshing flavors and foaming agents. A product that began as ancient powders eventually became a daily essential in tube form. Kevlar's story shows how a detour can lead to a breakthrough. In 1965, DuPont chemist Stephanie Kwolek was experimenting with polymers while searching for fibers tough enough for car tires. She ended up with a cloudy solution most people would have discarded, but instead, she insisted on testing it, and when spun into fibers, it turned out to be incredibly strong and lightweight. Analysis revealed that the fibers had tightly aligned molecular chains, giving them exceptional strength for their weight. Named Kevlar, the material was first used in racing car tires and industrial products in the early 1970s. But its biggest impact came with bulletproof vests, a fabric 5 times stronger than steel of the same weight that transformed personal protection for police and soldiers. Kevlar's uses later expanded into aerospace, construction, sports gear, and even musical instruments. A lucky but persistent discovery became one of the defining materials of the 20th century. The story of Velcro starts with a walk in the Alps in 1941. Swiss engineer Georges de Mestral noticed that burrs clung stubbornly to his clothes and his dog's fur. Curious, he put them under a microscope and saw tiny hooks catching onto loops of fabric. And that small detail sparked an idea. After years of experimenting, he developed 2 strips of fabric, one covered in hooks and the other one in loops. In 1955, he patented his invention and named it Velcro, combining the French words for velvet and hook. At first, many dismissed it as a gimmick, but when NASA used it to keep things in place during space missions, Velcro really took off. Today it's everywhere, from sneakers and jackets to medical gear and camping equipment, all thanks to a few burrs sticking to a dog. The tea bag began as an accident. In 1908, New York tea merchant Thomas Sullivan sent samples of his tea in small silk bags, and instead of opening them, customers dunked the whole bag into hot water and found it actually worked surprisingly well. No extra tools needed, just hot water and the bag. Sullivan soon switched from silk to gauze and then finally paper. And by the 1920s, tea bags were being mass-produced in the US and slowly spread to Europe. The 1930s brought the familiar rectangular shape, and after World War II, they became the standard. A simple mistake ended up transforming how much of the world drinks tea. The safety pin was born out of necessity. In 1849, New York inventor Walter Hunt was in debt. He owed just $15, but at the time, that was kind of a serious sum. While fiddling with brass wires, he bent it into a spiral with a clasp that covered the sharp point. And just like that, he just created the safety pin. Hunt patented his invention and sold the rights for $400, enough to pay off what he owed. The company that bought it, however, went on to profit far more. But Hunt was satisfied. He was debt-free. By the mid-1800s, the safety pin was a common household tool, and its basic design remains unchanged. A coil, a point, and a clasp. It's simple, effective, and still used everywhere today. Long before the internet or even the telephone, there was the telegraph. In the 1830s, Samuel Morse, frustrated by how long letters took to arrive, worked with Alfred Vail to create a device that sent electrical signals through copper wires. To make the system work, Morse also developed a code of dots and dashes to represent letters and numbers. In 1844, the first message was sent on the Washington-Baltimore line. What hath God wrought? Soon, telegraph lines spread across countries and oceans, shrinking communication from weeks to just minutes. The telegraph changed business, journalism, and warfare, and it paved the way for the modern communication networks we rely on today. Velcro, tea bags, safety pins, and the telegraph weren't the results of grand futuristic visions. They came from small observations, chance mistakes, and practical needs. Yet each one reshaped daily life, showing that big innovations often start with small, simple, unexpected ideas. And that's all for today, guys. If you like this video, please hit that like button and subscribe, as it really helps us a lot. Leave a comment with what objects you want us to cover next, and you know it. Until next time, see you again on Chronos History.